The world remembers her for her voice, but her story began in silence. Helen's childhood was wrapped in a hush that carried both comfort and sorrow. Her mother's warmth was gentle. Her father's past carried the chill of exile. Between their unspoken dreams and disappointments, Helen learned to observe rather than speak. She watched faces, absorbed moods, memorized pauses, the way people hid their truth between words. Acting didn't come to her as ambition. It came as hunger. A hunger to live beyond one life, to escape the quiet boundaries of expectation. The first time she stood on a stage, the lights cut through the dark like truth. Her heart trembled. Her pulse became the rhythm of the scene. And for a moment she felt seen, not as a daughter or a girl, but as something more. A voice that refused to disappear. The critics didn't know what to make of her. Too raw, too bold, too untamed for their comfort. But she wasn't built to please. She was built to provoke. She poured herself into Shakespearean roles with reckless devotion, playing tragedy like it was autobiography. The audience saw beauty. She felt exhaustion. Fame began to whisper her name, but every whisper carried a shadow. Behind the applause was loneliness, and behind her smile was fatigue that sleep could never cure. She learned early that talent doesn't protect you from isolation. It sharpens it. As she rose through the British theater world, men tried to define her. They wanted her talent, yes, but also her submission. Helen refused. She questioned. She argued. She walked away when silence was expected. They called her difficult. They called her dangerous. But she called it survival. Hollywood came with its golden masks and false promises. She didn't arrive as a dreamer. She arrived as a soldier, battle-worn from years of fighting for her own truth. In those studios, under those cameras, she learned power isn't granted. It's seized. Every role she played became a rebellion. Every word a reminder that she was more than a pretty face. The irony was cruel. She played queens on screen while fighting to be treated as an equal off it. Yet the higher she climbed, the deeper the silence within her grew. The loneliness didn't vanish with fame. It just dressed better. Nights were spent alone in rooms too elegant to feel real. She would stare at scripts that blurred into the carpet's pattern and wonder if anyone truly saw her without the costume, without the legend. Applause fades. Silence always returns. Then came Rio Hackford, a storm like her, wild and untamed. He wasn't her blood, but souls don't need DNA to recognize each other. He reminded her of the younger self she'd buried, the reckless dreamer, the believer in emotion over logic. With him, she found a mirror that didn't judge. They talked without structure, laughed without reason, and somehow healed each other's quiet wounds. For a while, she felt alive again. Not as a star, but as a woman capable of feeling without performance. And then, as time always does, it shifted. The films grew grander, the audiences larger, the honors heavier. She became Dame Helen Mirren, a name said with reverence. Yet she wore the title like borrowed jewelry, aware that beneath the polish was the same girl who once whispered in the dark, "One day, they'll see me." And now, the world saw her. But the haunting question lingered. Now that they see me, do I still see myself? Because fame, she realized, wasn't the light she once chased. It was a mirror reflecting every version of her, until even she forgot which one was real. It was a curtain call.
Of course,
When the news came, she didn't cry at first. She played their film again, The Leisure Seeker. When the final scene appeared, where their characters drove into the endless sunset, Donald turned to her and said, "We had a beautiful ride, didn't we?" She froze the screen, tears blurring the image, and whispered to the empty room, "Yes, we did." Later, she said, "He lived the way he acted, fully, truthfully, and without apology." Alan had taught her grace in silence. Donald had taught her joy in impermanence. Together, they had shown her that greatness isn't loud, it's consistent. The world remembered them for their films, but Helen remembered them for their kindness, for the small things that fame never noticed. Alan lending her his scarf on a cold night in Stratford. Donald slipping chocolate into her bag after a long day. She smiled when she remembered how he once signed his last note to her. "Keep driving, Captain. I'll catch up in the next scene." Months after their deaths, she couldn't delete their numbers. "I know they won't answer," she said softly, "but it feels wrong to erase their voices." Sometimes when she stepped on set, she still felt them there. Alan's steady calm, Donald's wry smile. At award shows, she'd glance at the empty seats where they might have sat. When legends fall, she whispered once backstage, the silence is heavier. And yet, even in that silence, something beautiful remained. Their legacy wasn't fame, it was presence. Their work had outlived their bodies. Their words had outlasted pain. She once told a young actor, they left me two gifts, how to stay and how to go. In late 2024, during a tribute event, Helen stood on stage holding a small glass of red wine, the same vintage she and Donald once shared after shooting. Behind her, the screen flickered with images, Alan in black and white, Donald laughing in sunlight. The audience rose in applause, but Helen didn't speak. She looked up, eyes glistening, and mouthed, "Thank you." After the ceremony, she went home and poured another glass. The fire crackled. On the mantel, two framed photos. Alan in his youth, Donald with that mischievous grin. She sat down, whispering to the quiet room, "You taught me how to leave beautifully." For a long moment, the world seemed still. Then softly, she added, "And I'm still learning how to stay." As 2025 unfolds, Helen carries them with her, not as ghosts, but as guides. Every time she steps on set, she feels their unseen hands steadying her. "I once feared growing old," she told an interviewer. "Now I see it as a privilege, the gift of still being here to remember." She realized that success isn't measured by applause, but by how kindly you hold others when the curtain falls. Alan had held her in silence. Donald had held her in laughter. Both had held her long enough for her to learn that love doesn't end when a heartbeat does. Now, when the lights dim and the camera rolls, she feels them in the air. A whisper, a warmth, a reminder. Maybe stories never end. They just find new actors to tell them. Now at 80, Helen Mirren stands at a point in life where grace has become her signature and peace her truest form of wealth. The storms of loss have softened into quiet wisdom, and the years that once tested her have now begun to bless her. She has nothing left to prove, yet everything she touches still gleams with purpose. Each morning, she rises before the sun, wraps herself in a soft wool robe, and steps into the garden of her London home, a place fragrant with lavender, roses, and the scent of legacy. Her fortune, earned through 6 decades of artistry, is estimated at around $100 million, a number built not from inheritance but from endurance. She began with nothing, a girl from a working-class home in post-war Britain, the daughter of a cab driver and a mother who once cut meat for a living. And yet from those humble streets she rose to the global stage, earning everything through sheer brilliance and belief. Today, that lifetime of work stands reflected not in vanity, but in tangible, breathtaking beauty. Her primary residence remains her beloved Los Angeles estate, a timeless 6,700-square-foot villa nestled along Laurel Terrace. Purchased in 1986 with her husband, Oscar-winning director Taylor Hackford, the home, worth an estimated $18.5 million, feels less like a mansion and more like a living museum. Its 6 fireplaces flicker with soft golden light, while massive glass doors open to sweeping views from downtown to the Pacific. Every object within has a story. Antique mirrors from Paris, Moroccan rugs, hand-carved oak panels, and the grand piano Taylor once surprised her with on their anniversary. "This house," she says, "wasn't built for show, it was built for staying." But that's not her only sanctuary. The couple's Lake Tahoe estate is a work of serenity, a multi-acre mountain retreat with panoramic lake views that feel almost divine. There, a private dock stretches over turquoise water, and inside, sunlight pours through walls of glass onto stone fireplaces and cream-colored marble floors. The property includes a guest house with an indoor pool, a library lined with hundreds of scripts, and a garden bursting with wildflowers. "It's where the noise stops," she once said, "and where the heart begins to speak." Her taste is elegant, never excessive. Her car collection mirrors that balance, part sophistication, part thrill. She drives a Mercedes-Benz S-Class for comfort, a Rolls-Royce Phantom for occasion, and a McLaren 720S Spider, her wild streak, as she calls it, for when the road calls her name. The McLaren, worth over $330,000, is a flash of silver fire. It reminds her, she says, that elegance can still outrun time. Among her treasures are also the quiet luxuries. A Cartier diamond watch gifted by Taylor after her Oscar win, collection of vintage hats and dresses dating back to her earliest stage years, and paintings from British artists she supported over the decades. But what she values most isn't stored in vaults. It lives in her causes. Helen's philanthropy is as generous as her art. She has donated millions to refuge and women's aid, championing victims of domestic abuse, and serves as a global ambassador for L'Oréal Paris, using her influence to redefine beauty for women over 70. Her partnership with Oxfam and the Prince's Trust continues to empower disadvantaged women and youth across the world. In 2024 alone, she contributed an estimated $2.5 million to charity projects, from children's education in Uganda to environmental preservation in Greece, where she co-founded Save the Olives, protecting ancient olive trees from disease. "If you've been given a voice," she said once, "use it to lift others, not to echo yourself." At home, her life with Taylor remains steady, tender, and filled with laughter. Nearly 40 years since they first met, they have no children together. But she has long embraced Taylor's sons as her own, especially the late Rio, whose memory lives quietly in the corners of their home. On his birthday, she still lights a candle in the garden and whispers a simple prayer. "Love doesn't vanish," she says softly. "It just changes address." These days, she spends her time writing, tending to her roses, and occasionally returning to the screen, not for fame, but for joy. In her upcoming project, she reunites with old friends in a film that celebrates age as beauty, not decline. "The older I get," she muses, "the less I act and the more I simply am." Her health, once tested by exhaustion and grief, is now her focus. She maintains a Mediterranean diet, olive oil, fish, vegetables, and red wine, and practices gentle yoga every morning. "I'm not chasing youth," she once told The Guardian. "I'm courting vitality." At 80, her eyes remain sharp, her smile radiant, her posture unbowed. From the cab driver's daughter to a dame of the British Empire, from the small stages of Essex to the grand halls of Hollywood, Helen Mirren's life is proof that grace can outlast glory and kindness can outshine fame. She has turned pain into art, loss into love, and time into legacy. So tonight, as the lights fade and her garden falls quiet, she sits with a cup of tea looking at the sky. The stars are bright, the world is still, and somewhere between the roses and the moonlight, you can almost hear her whisper, "I made it." If her story touched your heart, take a quiet moment to honor it, not with words, but with warmth. Leave a yai in the comments as your way of saying thank you to a life lived with courage, beauty, and grace. Share this story with someone who still believes in kindness, and let it remind us all that resilience never grows old. From all of us at Golden American Stars, thank you for watching, for feeling, and for remembering. May your days be gentle, your heart at peace, and your life surrounded by love, health, and abundance. Until next time, stay blessed, stay healthy, and may your life be as luminous as the legacy of Dame Helen Mirren. As the night deepens, her house glows softly under the hush of moonlight. The faint hum of the city fades beyond the hills, leaving only the whisper of leaves brushing against the windows. Helen sits alone by the fire, the same way she did decades ago when the world still doubted her. But now the silence feels different, earned, peaceful, full. The flames dance across the framed faces of those she's loved and lost, across the silver trophies that never meant as much as the stories behind them. She smiles faintly, tracing the rim of her teacup, her mind wandering through years of laughter, heartbreak, triumph, and grace. Every role, every line, every moment of doubt has shaped her into the woman she is now. Whole, unshaken, beautifully human. In her world, fame was never the goal. It was simply the echo of doing something truthfully. She closes her eyes and listens, not to applause, not to memories, but to life itself breathing softly around her. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise over her garden, another day to live gently and love deeply. And when the curtain finally falls, she knows it won't be an ending, just another act in a story still unfolding somewhere beyond the light. Because for Dame Helen Mirren, the performance was never about pretending. It was about becoming. A woman who turned her struggle into strength, her silence into art, and her life into a living testament that even in a fleeting world, grace endures.